Hi, I'm Megan Tilson, and today I'm going to be talking about the education system in America. In America, we have a failed education system. We live in a society where it is acceptable for students to get a D- in a class and still be able to move on to the next grade. What has a student learned that has actually stuck in their brain for them to be able to get a D- in a class and still move up to the next grade? We need to improve our education system by stop giving standardized tests and try to help students learn valuable knowledge rather than memorize information. The first problem I'm going to be talking about today is that right when we start school, we put students on a strict regimen. So what they learn first is to go to class, go home, do homework and study, and then go back to class and take a test over what they have learned. This regimen is smart, but it's not effective. What happens is students go home, they study, they go to that class, they get a bad grade because they didn't either study the right things or they don't understand what's going on. So when that happens, then the student isn't actually retaining any information, and if they get a D- or anything close to an F but not an F, they still pass and they don't have to retake the test. So in reality, they didn't learn anything. The second thing I'm going to be talking about is that students still get passed on to the next grade when they get a grade in a class that is 65% low. So that's really low. And if you get a 65% in a class, then you're only remembering or learning a third of the material that you were taught in class. So when you get that low of a grade in a class, the next grade is just going to be harder. So you probably aren't going to do as well in the next grade if you only get a D- in that class. If students are not understanding a third of the material in class, how well will they do in the next class? Probably not very well, as I just said. When a student gets a bad grade in the class, they can become grade obsessed. So when that happens, they study, try to get really good grades, and what they're actually doing is they're only studying just to get a good grade. They're not studying to actually learn the information. And that's what's wrong with the education system, is students are cramming information into their heads and they're not really taking anything that is valuable from the class. We also need to stop giving standardized tests. I feel like this is a big problem in America's education system, is standardized tests. Standardized tests do not provide a real picture of a student's ability to learn. Standardized tests can be nerve-wracking for students, which can make them do bad in the test when they really are, very intelligent and know what they're talking about and know what they're studying and feel like they might do great. But once they get in that room, they're really, they do horrible because they have really bad test anxiety, and there's nothing you can really do to help that. You're also set in a time limit when you take these standardized tests like the ACT, and that also doesn't help students who might take them a little bit longer to take the test. Standardized tests also affects teachers. Teachers feel the need to cram everything into one semester that the students need to learn, and they need to do it fast, and they have to do all of these quizzes that they think will help the students, when in reality it's stressing the teachers out more and they're not really teaching the things that they think are valuable in the classroom. So I feel like teachers need to be able to teach what their curriculum is based on that teacher, and not only teach just to try to get their students to get good grades on standardized tests. Also, if standardized tests for the student in that class don't go good, the teacher who taught that subject could get a bad rep because they're not teaching their students what should be on the standardized test, because those standardized tests somehow correlate with the students' intelligence or how smart they really are, when that's really not true. So, and when students take the standardized tests, they feel defeated and like they're not smart enough if they don't get the score that they were looking for. So that's another really thing about standardized testing. So that's the first thing that I think we need to do to try to fix our education system, so that prevents students cramming things, students learning things that they don't really need to learn, and they're only learning it for the standardized test. Another thing I think that we really need to do is to promote students to apply what they learn instead of memorize what they learn just to pass a test or a class. So the first thing we can do for this is we can help do this by re-representation of information. So that would be putting written words into pictures, putting pictures into written words, and saying verbal things and putting them into written words. So you're going through all these steps to really sink it into their brains and have them actually learn information rather than giving them a worksheet and saying like, this needs to be memorized basically by the time of the test. This is what's on the test. You need to memorize this and you need to pass the test to pass the class. That's what makes students cram study, and that doesn't go well in people's brains. It goes in through one ear and right out the other, just like when you're listening, but you're not really listening. Another thing that we can do to help students learn more knowledge rather than just memorize information is to give assignments where their homeworks will incorporate their everyday lives. So if a student is really into, music, give the students a project where they can put that into their own lives. They're going to be more wanting to learn things that are more personal to them and that they can relate to rather than things that they cannot relate to and that they're not interested in. So that can go towards a test, that can go towards homework, that can go towards, group studies where you incorporate things, with a teenager's life that they would actually be interested in. The alternative or opposing point of the view of the people who think that our education system is just great normally comes from the parents who put their children in private schools, which private schools promote inequities that currently exist in education because private schools are specifically designed and structured for wealthy families. So that's why they're able to put their children in these amazing schools that will give them the best education they can get to go into college and all these scholarships. Because they cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of money, and a lot of people can't afford to put their children in a private school. So I feel like that's very unfair, I guess. I might be being biased, but to have a school that's so great costs so much money that a lot of people can't afford. I would like all of you to look back at your education and think to yourself like, oh wow, was this everything I thought I was going to learn by the time I was 18 years old and was ready to go off to college? Like, am I going to know math really well? Am I going to know everything Shakespeare said? Am I going to, know how to write a speech, for instance? Students go into school wanting to do good. They are wanting to get good grades, and they're wanting to fly by and continue their education or go into the workforce or even into the military. But once students are hit with a standardized test and tells them that they aren't smart enough to get into a certain college or that they're below average for an average person, that knocks them down. That makes them not want to keep going. That makes them feel like they're not smart enough for college, or they, maybe they just shouldn't go. I didn't get a good grade. I didn't get a better score than this person because, I have good grades, but they did better. Like, why? Test anxiety. We should not be giving people standardized tests. It doesn't do anything. It doesn't, make someone, or I guess define their intelligence at all. We also need to make children and students feel above average no matter what. So, standardized tests will degrade them. We don't want to do that. And also, we need to start proposing students to learn information rather than just memorize information. So incorporating all of those, re-representation things where you're written into verbal, pictures into verbal, pictures into written, all those things to really get into their brains. And we need to focus on helping them learn instead of cram studying, because cram studying really doesn't do anything for the teacher. Their students will get bad grades and not learn anything for the next class that they're going to take. And it doesn't do anything for the student because they're not retaining information. Students are also taught to follow a specific regimen for 12 years. Once they get into college, that regimen is over. You have a bunch of different classes you got to take. You can take them at certain times, and that's why a lot of people, are hit in the face with reality, because they don't wake up 8 to 3 every day and go to school and then go to practice and go home, eat dinner, and go to bed. That's not how it works. So I feel like we kind of need to switch that up a little bit, and we really need to just focus on not giving children and students standardized tests and helping them retain knowledge rather than just learning, and that will really help our education system, I think. So thank you for listening.